Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Butchchester. You guys know who I am, and you know what I like to do on my show. Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about the topic. We'll be talking about the lessons learned in letting go. So you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I cannot wait to talk to you today about the topic, lessons in letting go. Now, as we are starting to get through this phase and stage of our lives, I think that when we look at the harvest of the heart and we are more aligned and more ready for what God has in store for us, then we are able to start the year the best version of ourselves. Letting go, let's admit, it's never easy. It's one of those spiritual disciplines that doesn't get enough credit for how sacred it really is. Because to let go is not to quit. Letting go means that you are going to trust the process. It's to say, God, I don't understand all of this, but I trust you. I'm going to put my hand in yours more often than leaning on my own understanding. When we talk about the harvest of the heart, part of that harvest includes the release. Every good gardener knows you can't keep everything. Some things you plant don't make it. They just don't make it through the entire process of the season. Some you harvest and use. Some you let return back to the soil. So today, we're talking about the grace, the wisdom, and the healing that come when you learn the lessons inside of letting go. Our key scripture today, Sparkers, is Isaiah chapter 43, verse 18 and 19. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Understanding what letting go really means. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means giving God permission to move. For those that like to micromanage or make sure that they always have their finger on the pulse of what's happening, this can be particularly difficult for you. The other is understanding that true release is active faith, not passive surrender. Active faith says, Lord, I don't know what's next, but I know you will guide me. Huge difference. Understanding what letting go can really mean also means that you cannot receive new blessings while your hands are full of old burdens. Now, you guys have heard me mention that one before. You can't walk around as the bag lady, as the bag man, as the bag person, right? You know that song, Bag Lady. You've got too much stuff. Dragging around all them bags like that. That song is so powerful because it's talking about carrying the stuff that no longer belongs to you, the stuff that no longer serves you, but yet you're so used to, addicted to, can't let go of all that junk. Learning to open our hands to allow God to remove what we don't need, let it fall away so that we can receive what He has in store for us. That is a powerful move. Sometimes we hold on because we think letting go means failure. But spiritually speaking, letting go is one of the most courageous things that we could ever do. When God begins to shift our season, He often starts by inviting us to release something, a mindset, a plan, a person, or even an identity that we have outgrown. Think about Abraham leaving his homeland, or the disciples dropping their nets. Each an act of faith that began by letting go. And maybe that's where you are right now. You're in the pause. You've been trying on your own and you just can't seem to catch anything. You can't catch a break. You can't catch a ride. You can't catch the rhythm. Whatever it is, you can't seem to catch anything. But when Christ says, cast it now on that side, there was just a pause. A pause saying, but we've been out here all day. Don't you think we've tried over there too? Because that's what humans do, right? But in that pause, there was just enough faith that said, okay, we'll do it because you are instructing us to do so. If you're in the pause, that's okay. At least there's still just enough faith for you to hear the voice, recognize it, and then act or move. You've been praying for direction, but God has been waiting for you to release what you kept trying to fix, to carry, to control. When we release, we make room for revelation. So today, I want you to take a moment to pause somewhere in your daily routine. Be it that you are someone who writes your gratitude message in the morning, or maybe you do yours midday. Are you more of an evening person who can reflect upon the entire day? Write down what you are grateful for, what you're hoping for, praying for, what you are standing for. Well, if you do, I want you to add these two to your journal. What are you still holding on to because it feels too risky to release? What are you still holding on to because it feels too risky to release? How might you feel lighter if you trusted God with it fully? That's the second question. How might you feel lighter if you simply trusted God? Now, I know sometimes asking the question is easier than the actual action. I gotcha. But everything that I suggest you do, I too have to take my own advice. Is there anything that I'm holding on to that I should release? Sometimes it's determining whether or not a program, an event, a conference that I've created so many years ago is still relevant today, if there's still a need for that, or has my audience, my client base, they've moved on, they've grown up, they've matured. So perhaps they don't need that anymore. But letting it go would mean it's time for me to stretch as well, to create something new, to do something different. So as much as I ask everyone who listens for them to stretch, I too have times of reflection and ask myself, is it time to release this so that God can give me something new for you? Well, the part that many times we don't discuss is the emotional side of the releasing. Oftentimes, release stirs up emotion before it brings relief. Being afraid can mean that you are feeling anxious, that you're feeling triggered. Losing control, that opening your hand. For so many people, this is one of the scariest things that they could ever do. You want me to not feel? To not have an emotional connection to the thing that you're asking me to do? Absolutely not. Instead, I do want you to connect to it emotionally. I want you to feel the release. Experience the emotions that it brings up so that when you get to the relief, boy, is it that much sweeter. Understanding the emotional side of release also means that you understand that God is not asking you to pretend that you're fine. He's asking you to hand Him the pain. In pretending that you're fine, you're denying a part of the process. You're glossing over what should be looked at and examined. That's part of gathering the lessons from what you have lived. Every lived experience leaves us a lesson. Sometimes our lived experiences are beautiful, they're great, they're grand, they're glorious, they're victorious, they're good words, positive words, good words, positive words. Sometimes they're negative words, negative feelings, negative expression. But even in that, once we have gotten through to the other side, good words can now start to fill in. How do I say that? Because you survived. You made it through. You didn't let it beat you down. You didn't let it sway you enough that you gave up. You made it through. And that is a positive word, positive expression, and something to be noted. When we're talking about the emotional side of release, we should also make note that tears can be holy. They water the ground for transformation. Far too many times we see someone crying, and the first things that are expressed is, "Oh goodness, why are you crying? Don't cry, stop crying." We don't want that person to cry. Our intention might be good in that I don't want you to feel pain. But if someone is crying, the tears are a release from what they've been experiencing, what they've been feeling. And they've gotten to the point where they now bubble out and over as tears. Tears can be tears of sadness, tears of frustration. They can also be tears of joy and happiness. we wouldn't tell that person to stop crying. So many times the reasons why someone says stop crying is not because of how they're unsure of your feeling, but it's because of how they are feeling. Because they can't bring the comfort, the control, the answer. They don't want you to make them feel bad. But then there's the flip side. There's always that person in your life that comes along who sees you crying and says, it's okay. Let it out. Yes, let it out. Cry. Cry. As they hug you and embrace you and let you know that in these arms, the person who's embracing you, in these arms, you're safe to cry, to let it out. It's okay to feel what you are feeling because I am secure enough in how I am able to support you to give you a moment of vulnerability. Because crying can be holy. Well, everyone, it is time for us to take a very short break, but when we get back, we will continue our conversation. We'll be back right after this.
Discovery. No, just a sec.
What would it look like if we listened more? Could the right voice, the right set of words, bring us all just a little closer? Get us to open up, even push us further? It could, if we took the time to listen. The most inspiring minds, the most compelling stories. Download Audible and listen for a change.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Bessester. Today we are talking about lessons in letting go. Let's jump back into that conversation. Now, let's be real. Letting go hurts. It's okay to grieve the dream that didn't happen, the friendships that faded, or the version of yourself that no longer fits where you're going. Far too often we hold on to things that no longer serve us because we don't have something to replace it with yet. Because we've been holding on to it so tightly, it has become a part of who we are. We do it as though we are in autopilot. It's automatically a response, a default setting of our lives. And letting go means we now have to pay attention to the road. We now have to pay attention to what the settings are saying. We now have to see. We now have to feel. We now have to do. We now have to be. So it's okay if you're just a little wobbly as you initially come off of autopilot. Even Jesus wept at the tomb of Lazarus. Though he knew resurrection was coming, that moment reminds us that divine purpose and human emotion can coexist. Sometimes your tears are a part of your healing. You can cry and still be growing. You can feel loss and still be walking in faith. The emotional part of release is where God meets you with comfort. Matthew 5:4 says it this way: "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." That verse isn't just about physical loss. It's about mourning what happens when we let go of anything that once held dear to us. But you know me, I'm going to always try to encourage you. So if you've been struggling to release something, give yourself permission to feel it and then trust that peace will follow. So what do we do when God removes what you wouldn't? That's a really great question, right? Sometimes God removes things because we're too attached to release them ourselves. Sometimes if you look back over your life and there's this one thing that really you were stuck on, that you couldn't seem to make any type of positive progression, if you notice, the things that motivated you to move kept getting worse and worse and worse, bigger and bigger and bigger, louder and louder and louder. That was God's way of each time making it so obvious that you couldn't avoid it, that you could not see it, you could not hear it, you could not do it. And once it got to that point, it's funny how you all of a sudden go, oh, okay, fine. So many of you have had that experience. If you haven't, that's fine. But believe you me, I know many of you have. There are some times in our lives, even still, where divine disconnections are protection and not punishment. You lost that friend, that job, that placement. You lost what you thought was power or esteem. You thought that you had been knocked off of your pedestal, when instead it was protection. By moving you out of the way, you missed the train wreck that was coming. Not realizing that the train wreck was coming in the first place is because you're a human. But God, in all of his divineness, knew that you did not deserve the punishment. So pleasantly, quietly, removed you from the situation. I know. I could just hear someone now saying, yes, that was me, and I did not realize it at the time. But the wonderful thing about how God operates is that when he does that, when he places you back on that pedestal, it was better than the one he took you down from or off of. When he puts you back in place, it's better than the place that you were initially. So that trust gets rewarded. When God removes you from what you wouldn't, many times it's because of closure. Closure doesn't always come in conversations, but sometimes it comes in conviction. There are times, dear Sparker, when God will gently, and sometimes not so gently, remove what no longer aligns with your growth. You may not understand it in the moment, but hindsight has a way of revealing divine protection. That job that didn't work out, that door that closed, that relationship that ended. If you look back with spiritual eyes, you can see often how God's mercy and his grace were written all over it. Letting go in these moments, yeah, they feel hard, but one day you will realize that it was necessary. Because God loves you too much to let you stay in what would have stunted your growth. John 15, verses 1 and 2 say it this way. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit. When God prunes, it's not rejection, it's redirection. So let's take a moment to reflect. Have you confused God's pruning for punishment ever in your life? If you have, now is the time to shift that paradigm. To understand that it was never about punishment, but it was about pruning away that which does not serve. You can now walk in that victory. What's one moment of removal that looking back was actually grace? And now that you know, boy, does it put a little pep in your step and realize that God was protecting you, saving you from that situation after all. See, the freedom that follows release is just as important. Letting go creates space for peace, creativity, and new blessings. God replaces what you release with something stronger, deeper, and better aligned. Freedom is the fruit of faith. Once you've released what God asked you to, something beautiful begins to happen, and you breathe easier. You stop trying to control the outcome, and you stop living from fear. If you've ever been afraid to let go, let this serve as your reminder that what's meant for you cannot pass you by. Release what's over, bless it, and step forward in your peace. Alrighty, everyone. Thank you so much for spending time with me here today. I hope that I have once again enlightened, inspired, and empowered you. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.